Tech guys are usually very good at tech, but they hate communication.
Let's continue.
Oh, no.
So my turn again.
Is it? No, it's my turn.
I was presenting this idea to the board.
But is it true or not?
No.
We're gonna find out today how it went, whether it's a good idea, whether you should consider it for yourself.
What if I say that it was not a good idea?
Okay, I have the second fact I wish I knew earlier.
What do I need to do to be, cybersecure? And he tells, well, cybersecurity is not something that can be reached. And I'm like, oh man.
The stupid security guys.
What is the size of the tragedy we are facing?
10,630 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
And things did not work out like that. And I would come up and he said, no, don't approach because the computer will break. Please leave the room.
I need justification from CEO.
Things will be cool and I could just, rest. Cybersecurity is not just one tool or three tools.
But some tools can even save you money. So
Absolutely.
choose wisely.
Right.
Yeah.
We are free minds. We can do whatever we want.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast by Zero Trust Media. We talk here about cybersecurity, business, and AI. And today I'm really happy to introduce you our exceptional guest, Anastasia Titova from Roosh.
Hi everyone.
Hi, as well.
You know this guy, right?
Okay, quick facts about Anastasia. So Anastasia runs Ops at Roosh, a venture studio that launched startups before Gen AI was cool. Ever heard about Reface? So that was them.
Anastasia is originally from Kharkiv, Ukraine.
Yeah.
Your turn.
And that's it?
Yes.
Where's the joke?
Well, that was not a hard fight to fight.
Yeah, despite Anastasia has built cybersecurity for entire Roosh, Anastasia is not a hacker. And before you start
knows?
doing that, you didn't know about much, at least, about firewalls, antivirus, and all this stuff.
I knew zero, like zero trust. I knew nothing about cybersecurity.
Let's continue.
Okay. So my turn again.
Is it? No, it's my turn. Anastasia is currently living in Lisbon, Portugal.
Yes, true.
Okay, so Roosh was vCISO client, like a virtual CISO. So instead of having your own internal CISO, you used to have services which helped you to establish cybersecurity framework.
But it's
right?
for you, it was Roosh was a client, but for Roosh wasn't a client. We're gonna find out today how it went, whether it's a good idea, and whether you should consider it for yourself.
What if I say that it was not a good idea? Tell me, you prepared for that?
Yeah, I want complete truth. I wish you could, recognize some things which you now understand could go better or more smoothly if you wouldn't have a lead CISO, but instead you would have internal CISO. The next fact about Anastasia, fast learner, because I remember those days. I was lucky to start working with you at that time, and you didn't know much about cybersecurity, but in a couple of months, basically after the onboarding period, which is on average 2 to 3 months, right? Something like that.
Well, that's I think it was 3 due to the complex structure of the
because the
company.
structure was and the risk map was quite a thing to establish. So yeah.
My next fact is that Anastasia started professional career in marketing.
Yep.
Ooh.
And
Even I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was my first job. I was not a good marketing manager, let me be honest.
It was for tech business.
Yeah.
That's
It was.
very
I kickstarted right away in the IT. It was not my original plan. I studied languages heavily in school, and I never thought my career would be tied to technical industry.
Yeah.
Moreover, we had a joke inside my family that I should not approach any important equipment within the house because it broke down
So they
every
bullied
time
you.
it broke down every time
You
I
should
came
do this.
around. Go ahead.
No, this sign?
No, so my brother would actually joke like when he was working on or playing on the computer, and back in my days we had one computer for the whole family, and I would come up and he said, no, don't approach because the computer will break, please leave the room. So I never considered myself as a person that would be fit to work in the IT sphere, and I got into the end industry by complete chance. I was searching for my first job, and it so happened that a few of the job advertisements that I applied to were all of them were posted by recruiting agency that was recruiting for like small businesses around Kharkiv, and they asked me to come in and interview, and I came in and they tested my English, and they said, all right, so you have very good English, let's set those job advertisements aside because we have something else for you. There is an IT company that is searching for a marketing manager, and they need the person to have very good English. And I was like, oh no you probably don't know me about IT, and and me, we do not match. But I'm not.
And you told the story about your brother.
Yeah. And I told her, I'm honest. Nobody sane in the tech industry would hire me because I have nothing to do with tech, and I have a bachelor. I'm a
only
master
later
of
in
business.
the years you found out that cybersecurity is not actually an IT role.
Yeah, that's true. It's actually more of a process and organizational role than it does require. So you have to have people who would understand what they're doing, but it requires a lot of process building and a lot of optimization and communication rather than tech stuff.
I always knew that marketing people are not good at cyber, and you didn't become a marketer. You become a cyber.
True.
Cool. Good. So
Next fact. Do you have
I have
any?
run out
Oh
of
no,
facts.
I win this time. So I have more, which is like 10 years ago, you switched to business operations in tech.
Yeah.
And then I have one, which is a wild guess, which is based on your Instagram, which I found just before the podcast. The fact is that you probably like monkeys.
Monkeys?
Yeah.
He always found very, very awkward facts.
But is it true or not?
No. I'm just wondering, maybe you found some other person on Instagram, because I do not have any pictures with monkeys.
Really?
Fact checking, please.
It was very quick before the podcast, but I believe that was you. But not trust no one.
See? Trust no one.
You want to find a monkey photo?
I'm asking Gen AI to generate them.
Are you using one of the Roosh apps?
By the way, I do not mind monkeys, just so if there are any... Oh, okay, so yes. Okay, it's true. It is
Trust
true.
no one.
Just for the record, it is true. Ollie showed me a picture of me in Thailand holding a huge
Could we show
orangutan.
it over here?
It's no secret, but it was so long ago, and the only reason I have this picture is because the monkey, it was an orangutan, I think. It was so big, but they allowed you to actually take it, kind of, and hold it, and it was such a cool experience. So I decided to post it, but it was so long ago.
So it means another fact is that you have good muscles if you can hold big monkeys.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to the gym.
I do actually, yes. I it's probably hard to say underneath this huge suit, but yes.
Okay, I have one more, which is the last one from my side. So it's +3.
Yeah, I didn't know we were in a challenge. You can win always if the second player is not playing.
And the fact is that soon you'll be moving to a new role.
Yes, that is true. So I have been working as head of operations in Roosh for 2.5 years, and I'm going to be switching to planning and performance, which is more of a strategy forming department.
Cool. I mean, I believe the switchers, so people who switch from the direction to a direction, or from
from one domain to another.
Yeah, one domain to another, are the best people, because you collect a lot of knowledge in your previous domain, and then you enter this new domain with a lot of this energy and willingness to learn, and you just have all that background that probably people in this domain rarely have, and then you just combine. So very cool.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. As my role as a head of operations is still, yes. I run 2 sub-departments, which is office management, office administration, and IT. And by IT, I do not mean development, software development, I mean system administration.
So and exactly, you were nominated for the role of running the cybersecurity stuff in the company. Exactly because you work with people and you work with IT, right?
Yeah.
With that part of IT which supports the operations of the company.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so we have here, this was not written by ChatGPT this time. So we have the Icebreaker now, and which is...
Oh, we broke it.
Let's talk about something not business related, but maybe you can remember some story from your past personal experience where you had some cybersecurity incident or anything related.
Yeah, I have a story. So I'm pretty much a very organized person, and I usually am very careful with my documents and things like that. But I have once left my car keys inside the car, left the car open, and walked off without realizing it. And I went off to the mall, shopping mall, bought something, and I was walking back to my car, and I'm trying to search for the keys, and they are not there. And they're not in my pockets, they're not in my purse, and I'm just going crazy. It's because it's terrifying. And I was prepared to come and not find my car at the parking lot, but it was there. So I came up, I opened the door, and I see my keys laying on the driver's driver's seat, and it was so like I was happy to see them there, but it was so scary.
What did you drive?
I had a Ford Focus back at the day.
And you could imagine if it was nowadays and you would own, let's say, Tesla or any other more digitalized car where you could actually open and run it with the phone, and you have, your cards on the phone, you have everything on the phone. Probably you would never forget the phone on the driver's seat.
Yeah.
But the keys
are a little bit trickier.
It's just the key from one item while you have, everything on your smartphone.
Any new habits after that, like having a rope?
The trick is that the car I had after that had a more keyless access, which makes things so much simpler. So I guess my answer would be having a keyless car.
By the way, there is another drawback of keyless because the signal can be intercepted, and so the most secure would be like physical key, right, which is difficult to reproduce. But yeah,
actually I've heard of that. So my previous car was a Lexus, and I bought it, and the next day 3 people told me, do you know that this is the most hijacked car out of all those that are in Ukraine? And I was like, man, where were you when I was making a choice? Why are you telling me this to me now? And I got pretty paranoid, and I went off and bought like an expensive alarm system. And then I had this whole thing where I had an app, and I knew if the car was, I don't know, being opened when I'm not there, even if it was changing the altitude, because sometimes they would.
So you turned off the alerts in the end.
No. I was actually very cautious about that. But
security loves determination.
Yeah.
Very cool. So let's move on to another topic.
Let's actually start the topic. But it's important for the audience to understand, the assembly of who is discussing, this important topic, I guess. So.
And I think it's very good to remember that cybersecurity is not only at your work or in your laptop, it's all around you, even with your personal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all over the place now. Just to sum up, it was a very long journey of ours to get it to this point. So Anastasia runs cybersecurity as a whole for the Roosh. She was never an IT girl before, right? So it was kind of very new for her. And she very successfully, and I am as an examiner could say, passed this exam. So it would be very interesting to hear from you your insights, what you felt, what you now understand you could do better that time. And probably before we switch into that, maybe you could very quickly and briefly explain what is the cybersecurity journey for you if you would start it from scratch again.
May I just ask one question before that? Can you just briefly explain what is cybersecurity?
It's his favorite question. He still doesn't know.
Okay, so in my own words, and this is how I would describe it to other people, I would say that it is security of all of your digital information. Pretty much everything that is stored. If you store money in the safe, that's physical security. Yep. But if you store some sort of information in a digital form, cybersecurity is what's, making this process of storage secure. I don't know if it makes sense. But
absolutely. I love this. All right.
So
and what about processes? Let's say that the information was not the target of cyber attack, but the process is influenced by, in a non-authorized way, so to say. Would it be a cybersecurity case, or cybersecurity still focused on information?
The process, of course, processes are important as well. Thank you for pointing that out. You, as an expert, would definitely give probably a better definition than I did, but I hope that at least mine was very short.
It's important that you give it.
I like your more than his.
It's kind of like, how would you explain cybersecurity to a 10-year-old? Well, maybe 12. That's how I would explain it. At least in short form, that's kind of how it is.
Just for me, I guess that the most important part of cybersecurity, which many people meet, is that it's basically a process itself. So you can't be cyber secure forever or in any given point in time. And
that was
the
my
process
first
which
insight about
supports
cybersecurity.
Other processes and the information security, obviously, sure. But anyway, let's start from your journey. What was the trigger for Roosh to actually start doing cybersecurity?
So I was very lucky because it wasn't because we faced an incident. Usually, I'm guessing.
Now you know the
please
statistics.
correct me if I'm wrong. But usually, the companies usually start taking cybersecurity seriously after they face a very big cybersecurity incident. For us, it wasn't like that, and I was, thank God, because it would would have been so much harder for me to, without knowing any cybersecurity tips and tricks and techniques, because you have to know what to do and how to back up in order to recover from a cybersecurity incident. So with us, it was actually a preventive step. And the idea was that I came to work to Roosh, and I had the system administrator department under me, and we started reviewing the processes, started looking at what's the situation, what do we have right now, and we realized that we didn't have even some of the basic instruments that we needed, and those were the anti-malware, which we do have right now, for the record, and we also didn't have the mobile MDM, the mobile device management system. So we thought that we probably need an anti-malware to pick an anti-malware and some sort of an MDM and install it.
But at the first place, why did you start thinking about MDM and anti-malware?
So it was based on the expertise of the system, of the experience of my system administrators. They brought this issue up and said, hey, we have an issue. We probably need this and this, which is cool. Guys, lots of respect. So I was presenting this idea to the board. There was a board meeting where we were planning our future budgets and things like that. And I was, among everything else, was presenting the idea of purchasing.
You mentioned,
I said that.
And also we need this stuff.
And the way I put it is that we plan to work on our cybersecurity, and that's and we need this much money to purchase anti-malware and MDM. A few people on the board from the board rightfully mentioned that just purchasing anti-malware and the MDM does not equal to building cybersecurity within the company, which I was shocked about because I thought that, once we install it, we'll be done. Things will be cool, and I could just, rest and I would just put a tick and say, okay, done, all set.
Later on the interview, I have a question. What would you say? I wish I knew earlier. That
was one of the things. But actually, thanks to that event, we decided that we made a decision within the company to take a strategic approach to cybersecurity and to actually work on it systematically and build a whole cybersecurity system. So that's kind of how we started.
So basically, your IT department brought up the topic about cybersecurity, that they felt that you are missing some technology to protect your users, and then it went to the board meeting. And after
the board members themselves understood, they catch up with that and said that, guys, good idea, let's investigate, right?
They had more experience in this than I did, and they unlike me, they knew that what I was saying was not equal. It was not equal to building cybersecurity systems.
Right.
So then the decision was made to move forward with a more complex, structured, and systematic approach.
And at that time, have you decided who will be the owner of the process?
So it's just historically, since I was in charge of system administration department and there was no one else, we decided that it would be me and the team. And I would really want to underline that the team took a huge part in this, and I would not be able to do that without my technical team.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not a tech person, and it would have been impossible. And I actually thought at the beginning, when we started this journey, that I would kind of kickstart the process, make sure we signed the necessary paperwork and things like that, and then just leave.
And it would just be rolling by itself.
And then I would be just, I'll let my IT guys handle the,
Okay,
the
I have
situation.
the second fact. I wish I knew earlier.
Yes, that was my kind of understanding. I was like, okay, I'm gonna attend a couple of meetings, make sure things are going smooth, and you disappear. And and things did not work out like that, luckily, because it was definitely an interesting, challenging, and great experience for me personally, and I learned a lot. But so that's how we kind of transferred to building cybersecurity as a system inside the company. And if I'm gonna jump to the next question or not, but what we did is we did not have enough expertise within the company. We did not have somebody who would have enough knowledge about cybersecurity. Our system administrators are great, but it's a different domain.
Absolutely.
You have to be knowledgeable in, and you have to have the security kind of mindset to work on that. So we didn't have expertise within the company, and that's when we realized that, okay, process-wise, I can run it, the hands-on job would be done by system administrators, but we need somebody else to help to guide us through this process. And in our case, we turned to an external company, and that's how I met Art, because they were guiding us through the process of building cybersecurity within the company. And we turned to them for their vCISO.
Did you realize it right away that you are missing expertise and you need to hire someone externally?
Yes.
So
yes.
you needed,
yes.
Okay. And how did you land with Art? Was it a recommendation?
I think it was a recommendation, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah.
In cyber, it's always like that. I mean, the trusted circles, unless somebody would recommend and say, yeah, these guys are nice, you could work with them. It's very, I would say, complicated road, or let's say go-to-market strategy for a cyber company everywhere in the world. It's not only about vCISO services or particular Eastern Europe. It's traditional stuff. That is why we have so few startups, successful startups in cybersecurity worldwide. In general, we have, I think, something around 5,000 companies, which is kind of very small number.
Very little, yeah.
For the whole industry, right? So
because trust no one.
Trust no one, yes, exactly. So it's usually only the recommendation could help you kind of justify whether this or that company is trustworthy.
Remember my joke about IT and security guys? Well, you understood at a certain point that it's not an IT, what is the right word would be here? The IT responsibility to care about cybersecurity. And I always joke with the clients to make it simpler and more understandable that for IT guys, it's always...
Tell it to our audience.
Yeah, it's always important to have as many bulbs shining and, lighten up as possible. So the whole, any type of traffic should be available and should be able to go through any firewall. All computers should be on, servers on, web servers on, all websites, mobile applications, etc. And for security guy, the best device, the one which is turned off, right? So this is the constant tension between these two entities, and that is why it's hard sometimes to wear these two hats simultaneously. And most companies at a certain point of their maturity level, they separate these two activities. But yeah, traditionally everybody thinks that cybersecurity should be the part of IT stuff in general in the company, especially this trend tends to be more actual the smaller company is. So the bigger companies, more structured the processes are, and you as operational expert, that the structure of processes is everything, and especially for cybersecurity as well. Yeah. So
I mean, probably at the beginning you don't have even IT guys, right? So you have some technical guys or guys responsible for tech. Then at some point where you're growing, and then you have the IT person dedicated for like provisioning, administration of the stuff, and then the next level would be to have the security guy or to hire someone on the side.
So cybersecurity was not about MDM and antivirus, but what was it about then?
It's like a samurai who doesn't have an aim, but he has a journey.
Okay,
so cybersecurity is a journey.
Remember this.
Cybersecurity is a journey. It's basically what I found out is about identifying the key elements within your system, within your business structure, the most vulnerable elements, and searching for ways to protect them. And it's actually a very complex approach. Sometimes in order to mitigate certain risks, you don't need any additional software or tools. You need a certain policy within a company that would not allow just chaotic generation of accounts, or would set the bare how do you call it, the bare minimum necessary access level. So you do not just give off admin level roles in every system to everybody, because it's not safe.
Makes sense.
And sometimes it sounds very simple and very obvious, but trust me, once you dig in, and I remember this experience once we started going through our systems, I was like,
Jesus Christ.
why is this person, why is this person even still here?
Who is this person?
They do not longer work with us, but somehow their account still exists or whatever reason. So I'm sure that it's not to say bad things about Roosh. From my experience, it happens in every company. It's just with some, there's more structure, let's say, within managing account, but there is chaos in the way, people send information to each other, and they're sending, financial files through Telegram, for example, which is a nightmare, or things like that. So it depends, but I'm sure that every company who has not started working on cybersecurity on a daily basis, who is not taking care of it, as a process has some sort of like very obvious issues that could be fixed, but you first need to identify them.
So you have no rules and you get whatever you get. You don't know what you get.
Yeah.
But people are people, so if you don't teach them, if you don't set the boundaries, like, you might get unexpected results, absolutely.
Okay. So basically, as I understood you, and I would impersonate another person who doesn't know what was happening at that time, I would ask you, like, so you started from the housekeeping, right? So you started to inventory the stuff you have.
Yeah, from inventory process. Basically, the same way you inventory, we have, for example, we have equipment in our company, and we label them with, like, equipment numbers or things like that. You go through the same process. You kind of take a look at your business and say, okay, what assets do we have within the business?
And what is
processes?
assets in cybersecurity?
It could be different things. It could be actual physical assets like laptops or mobile devices, for example, that you use for testing or things like that. Or it could be systems. For example, you're using Google Workspace, a popular tool for your emails, and it's a system that could be potentially targeted by hackers. So you need to protect this system as well, right? You can have, I don't know, it could be servers, it could be anything, things like that. And we actually even identified people as a group of assets, because we also needed to, people are also always part of the process, and you sometimes need to manage that asset. It's not very correct to call people assets, but I mean like a group, asset group. You still need to work with them.
Don't worry, we're fine with that.
Yeah, yeah. So we basically went through all of our assets, and we first sat down and defined, okay, what do we have? I also need to point out that Roosh has a very complex internal structure, which made it so much harder for us to kickstart the processes in the beginning.
And by structure, you mean like different units?
Yeah, different units. For some of them, we run their whole, we run all of the IT processes for them. For some, we only, some are just using our Wi-Fi, but they have their own, they have their own system. They set their own rules for their, Google Workspace, for their messengers, because they are almost like an entirely different company, but we are still related. So
some units are more independent, while others are being centrally managed.
Exactly, and that's why it made it so much harder to kind of understand. So we had to set the perimeter and decide, okay, which departments are we gonna manage and which we're not, or for example, we're going to set a set of rules, we're going to use a set of systems for these departments, for this we're going to use half of that, and for some we're just going to politely advise what to do, but they're their own, they live on their own, so they can decide whether to take our advice into account or not. But we had to decide on that first. We kind of had to describe the context. With some departments, because we also, within the company, we allowed a lot of freedom. A lot of the departments could pick the tools they use on their own.
The flexibility, right?
Yeah. So it helps. It does help the flexibility. It speeds up a lot of processes so much. But what you get, the downside of that is that you have a lot of tools that our IT department doesn't even know about, or has heard about, but we do not run them, so we don't know if they are secure, have they been set up right, who is using them, what are they storing there, and it's an issue. So we had to actually go go to heads of each department, ask them to kind of write down the inventory of the systems and the tools they use, just so we actually find out what is the scope of the project and what is the size of the tragedy we are facing, and it was a big one.
Boundaries, yeah.
So that was definitely step one. We had to sit down and realize, okay, that's what we have. These are the systems, these are the assets, and here's the perimeter that we're gonna cover, and work from there.
And we're talking about 100 people approximately, right?
Yeah.
And how many departments approximately?
Okay, let's say around 10, just so that around 10.
Cool.
Yeah.
About assets, actually years ago I found out for myself, the perfect definition of assets in terms of cybersecurity.
Tell us to the audience.
This is whatever makes a value for the business. Mm-hmm. So if the employee obviously brings value to our business, it's for us as a cybersecurity managers, it's an asset which should obviously have some expression in digital, in cyber, right? Yeah. So obviously if it's a chair, which is not a smart chair, it's not connected to your network, it's probably doesn't bring too much value for us in cyber. But most assets we really use, like laptops, license keys for some software, subscriptions, etc. And people have identities, digital identities, which we also need to manage. And you mentioned this, by the way, this topic, and we definitely would come to that because it's the the hardest thing I would say in cybersecurity is to effectively and affordably manage identities. But yeah, so you did the housekeeping. Now you know what you got.
And before we moving to the next step, just for our audience again to better understand how this process actually looked like. So you reach out to Art and saying like, hey, we need help with cybersecurity. You're CISO. Maybe you can help us. Like, what happened next? Like, you said you mentioned like you identified the assets, but like, was it like a series of calls? How long it take? And
do we have the track record of the amount of hours of calls that we had? Do you remember it? Because I don't have it at my hand. But it was so overall. We worked together for a little less than 2 years, I think. We covered it, and we had bi-weekly calls. We then switched. I think we switched to once a week, like at very later stages.
So 2 times a week? And
2 times a week, an hour and a half. At the beginning, it was about 2 hours. So I have like a track record of the amount of hours I spent listening about cybersecurity.
So so certified professional.
Almost. But yeah, so it was actually a series of calls, and they were, at the beginning especially, they were long. Partially because I was new and there were a lot of questions new to cybersecurity, and there were a lot of questions that needed clarifications, and only
I saw the number.
Jesus Christ.
What is the number?
It's 10,630 minutes per 2 years.
This is crazy.
Yeah, but it's only meetings, and there was lots of homework for both parties. So yeah, but the asset inventory, it's hard to start, I would say. I always find customers customers find it
scare them.
But once they start doing it, it doesn't look so complex anymore, because you basically you could start with a spreadsheet. You could just start noting down what you or your people really use, and sending out the questionnaires to your people is probably the easiest way, because they anyway would highlight top 5 tools they use, whether it's a mail,
or maybe
Jira,
you can use
Asana,
an
Notion,
automated system for that.
Which we found out later on. You could,
But I always think, cybersecurity is a domain which is very hungry for investments. So it's very easy to lose track of how much dollars you spend for cybersecurity without achieving significant progress. So I always firstly think about the budget part of things. Could we do it for free? What if we choose the free path? What complexities it would bring? Either we need to spend too much time, or it would just take, the duration would be very long, or whatever the downside is. If there are no significant downsides, I would always try to do this cheap or free way, right? And obviously almost for every activity in cybersecurity, you have a tool. Right, and in most cases it is paid. And sure, if you have unlimited budget, it's much more easier to start subscribing to every second tool, which would definitely help you. But again, if you start inventory of your assets, just do it on a high level, right? You could just write down the name of the apps your people use, the names of the people work at your places, right? The names of the offices, rooms.
I disagree. For this part, you better use automated tools.
Whatever path you choose, you just need to start with it, because once you do it, you know what you need to protect.
So for our audience again, you started these calls, and we're just like mostly 2 of you finding out the assets, and then you need to...
Art and his colleagues, they gave us a framework for tracking assets, which was helpful, because we could then, we just kind of need to fill in the gaps, the blanks, name all of your computers, and we're like, okay, we go and check all of our equipment, for example. So having some sort of framework helps. But again, as Art said, it could be a spreadsheet. You can track it in Notion. You don't have to. It's not a special system.
Did he sell you Notion as a?
We already had Notion.
Sell like
an idea,
evangelist, because he loves Notion. He tells it to
I actually
all the time.
So I don't know if we can keep it or not, but Art and the team, they had they learned how to make very complex but cool looking dashboards, and you come in and everything is looking very cool. The progress,
love dashboards.
the steps. What's in the sprint? What are we gonna do next? What is the overall progress? It looks very, very complex.
Now I want to go through that process with them.
And we also
It's too late. You're already SOC 2 certified.
so we had all of that, and we have a lot of background work so all of the tabs, everything. And so every time I would show somebody would ask, okay, Anastasia, what's going on in cybersecurity? I was so happy they asked me. I'm like, I'm gonna show you the dashboard, and I show everybody, and because it looks so sophisticated, everybody was like, wow, you must have really done a lot of work in cybersecurity. I'm like, yes, look at the dashboard. Because it does look very impressive when you take a look at it.
Just all it doesn't like Notion.
Well, it's sometimes. I mean, it's.
I don't know what to do with him.
You have to get used to it, but once you do, it becomes very useful tool. Yeah, but I think it's with everything. For me personally, whenever I start using any kind of new tool, I'm like, even if I'm using the same tool, but it changed the design, and I open it up, and I'm like, I want my old design back.
It's control.
I don't know where's this button. The things like that, but. Again, sometimes passes through, and you're like, okay, it looks good. It's convenient. You just need time to get used to things.
People get used to everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in general, there are no perfect tooling for managing cybersecurity, I would say, because there are so many ready to go. Notion is definitely not perfect. There are so many downsides and so many complexities.
Of course, I know.
With the same with Asana, with the same with Jira, the same with you name it. Any tool which you pick, it would be definitely not the best for managing complex structures of cybersecurity. But in general, managing structures and making this housekeeping and making it in a quick way. And again, without paying upfront a fortune for some fancy subscription for some tool, which are great, really, but they cost you.
Some are great.
Well, most of them are good now. 30 plus tools were tested by us during the last year.
Out of 5,000?
No. I mean the compliance GRC tools, governance, risk and compliance tools, which help you to manage the controls, risks, tasks, whatever. And if you start from just buying the tool where you could finally just visualize your context, and you're not yet doing a cybersecurity actually yet, right? You're planning, you're structuring it. So I think it doesn't force it. But it's important also to emphasize that Roosh is probably one of the few unicorns in a sense that 80% of companies start caring about cybersecurity because of the hack which they experienced, and the other 20 or 19, let's say, because of the compliance. And you didn't chase compliance, and you weren't hacked. It was real maturity of the company of understanding that this is a risk for us and we want to manage this risk, which is a great example.
Triggered by IT guys, by the way.
Yep. Yeah. And triggered by IT guys, not by somebody from cybersecurity field who was kind of selling this idea that guys, you need to manage cyber. Cool.
Yeah.
So we finally have everything structured. We answered all your questions, right?
No,
to the next one, to the next phase. What happened after the asset inventory? Or let's say what you think would be the right thing to do after asset inventory?
So basically, you can approach the next step fairly simply. Again, it wasn't as simple for us due to business complexity, but the idea is actually simple. You look at the context and everything you have, the assets, and you ask yourself, what are the most vulnerable assets, or which assets, if something happens to them, would affect our business the most? So, for example, if you have a printer and it stops working, unless you're a copy center whose business is copying and printing, things will not get too bad, right? It's still not cool, but it's nothing serious.
So you rank basically the importance of each asset, right?
Yeah, so we ranked it in terms of each asset in terms of its confidentiality, integrity, and availability, or accessibility could also be used, right? Or
but it's the fourth feature,
Okay, so we gave each asset 3 rankings, not just 1. But again, it was our way. You do not have to do that. You can make it much
And what was the
simpler.
scale? Like 0 to 10? Or?
I think at the beginning we actually used like 3, so 1, 2, or 3,
Okay.
which is low, medium, high. I think we switched to 1 to 5 later on because using only 3 levels kind of made it seem like a lot of assets are important, and we still wanted more graduality to that because we needed to still wanted to understand which things we need to focus on first. So yeah, but in any case.
But actually, this is a great example of also our constant advice of keep the things manageable and simple and understandable for you. It's absolutely fine to start with a simplified approach and then improve it once you understand that, okay, it's too simple for me. I need some more room, right? But imagine you have almost, I would say, thousands of assets, and you need to rank every from 0 to 10. And when you start to comparing, okay, last time for this asset I marked 7, and now it's 6 probably, or maybe you would spend too much time on thinking about this stuff, which is irrelevant because you just need to go quickly and understand the overall picture.
Yeah.
Start from small, and then sure, you want to prioritize one asset over other, then you introduce
So
some new scales.
like very important, somehow important, not very important, not important.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
So you could do that. So so we did. We ranked all of our assets, which then helped us understand what are our biggest vulnerabilities, and from there, what we need to focus on improving first. As simple as that.
How did you find the vulnerabilities or potential vulnerabilities?
So it was actually more of a judgment call, it was not a lot of like technical things where we went and actually tried hacking each service, each computer, not like that. We mostly approached it in a very general way, where let's say we use Google Workspace. We ask ourselves a question: what if, for example, it becomes unavailable? Like something happens, somebody hacks it, and we cannot access our Google Workspace anymore. How drastic are the consequences for us? And for a business like ours, they're pretty huge. So we rank it high.
Is this like availability parameter?
For us, yes, that was the availability parameter. We also because we ranked each parameter, we also then asked ourselves a question: what if the information from the Google Workspace, for example, leaked and became, publicly available, or somebody stole it? Like, how we ask ourselves that. And for us, again, like we say, okay, for us, let's say it's pretty important. There might be businesses where there are not so many important, where there's not so many important information in Google. So it depends on every business.
Probably for most would be still important. So in the email, you typically have important.
Typically,
data.
Yes, but for example, again, it may be depending on what kind of information you send through email, and also let's say, and also integrity, a third parameter. What if some of the information that is stored there is broken, is like a mess, so it's not complete anymore? And again, if you store a lot of information there, it's bad, so you rank it high. Maybe somebody doesn't store much information there, so even if there is some mess, like you cannot access email history, all of the documents, important paperwork or things like that are stored somewhere else, and you're like, okay, well, I wish I could access email history, but I can keep working. It's not a big problem for me. So you rank the things, and then it becomes very obvious what you need to focus on first, second, and third.
Yeah. Okay, asset inventory finished. We now rank the assets. We now have the holistic view of everything we use in the company. And what's next? We start implementing cybersecurity, right?
I'd say, pretty much yes, but you still, you then kind of build a roadmap of what you need to do in order to mitigate those risks, going from the highest
risk.
one.
So the very important word, risk.
Yes.
Where are the peers in this journey? During the asset inventory, you mark this CIA parameters, and then how you use it, how they become actionable, the numbers itself.
Because we also rank risk levels, and that's where you helped us, because I would not have been able to mark them by myself. Yes.
So we do a risk assessment.
We do risk assessment. Again, Art, please correct me if I'm wrong. It could be done if you're starting from scratch. You're a small company and you cannot hire an expert within your company. You just you don't need one yet, and you do not have the finances to hire somebody outside. you can again try and evaluate risks on your own to start this process.
And now you have ChatGPT who could actually
help you
really draw for you a very nice assembly of the potential risks which are in the context of your organization. It would be definitely not perfect and it would require human touch sooner or later, but in the beginning you just could have 10, 20, 30, 50 risks which LLM considers relevant to you, and you could mark them with your IT guys. And having the asset inventory in place, which of those risks are in general applied to those assets?
Yeah. In our case, Art and the team helped us identify the risks. It was a much more sophisticated approach than ChatGPT, or I don't know, maybe you did use it, but you never told us.
I think we started when it was not, Gen AI wasn't so popular.
Yeah, true. But in any case, we ended up using a framework with CIS controls as a framework to identify risks and mitigate them.
And I remember when we were discussing which path to start following, it was SOC 2, obviously, ISO 27K, and CIS controls as a set of controls without, this all extra compliance stuff. And you selected CIS controls, basically.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we thought about it and we had an internal discussion within the company whether we need to take the, let's say, ISO pass or the SOC 2 pass. And for us at that point, we did not have a business need for acquiring a certain certification, and that was our case.
And CIS controls are so low level and they're quite technical that first of all it's easy to understand and interpret them and understand what actually this recommendation asks me to do. And secondly, you could always use the CIS controls later on your SOC 2 whatever journey.
So basically it's a good foundation.
You can build up on that, for sure.
And in fact there are many companies as well who omit the risk assessment stage. Let's say they omit to make it diligently, and they basically do the asset inventory and switch into CIS controls mode. I would say that still some sort of risk assessment in the middle should be in place, but if you're not chasing for compliance, if you're not chasing for certification at some time, it's a good choice. It saves you some time and it makes the time to value from the moment you start thinking about cybersecurity to actually improving cybersecurity much more shorter.
Does it mean that you might just go ahead and implement anti-malware system before hiring vCISO?
This is a very good question, by the way.
So I wouldn't say that it's you can, and in many cases actually you should. You don't have to wait. Let's say you understand that you need to hire a CISO either inside a company or you're looking for an external contractor. It can sometimes take a lot of time to find a suitable candidate or a suitable company, and you do not have to sit and wait and just watch how your computers are getting attacked.
Probably it's the other way around. Just sit there and not knowing that your computers are being attacked because you don't have the visibility.
True. So I'm not saying that it's not a step. It is an action item. It's just that the only thing that I would point out is that you have to realize that just installing the anti-malware or just getting any other tool does not equal to having a system in place. That these are two different things. This is just a tool.
So it's an element of the framework.
It's an element of a framework. So let's say we purchased and installed the anti-malware and the MDM while already working with Art and the team. We validated our choices, and they told us, from our experience, these and these tools have better quality or things like that. And we picked the ones that we felt that were pre-approved, but the ones that we also felt would be easier for us to use and manageable and things like that. But we could have easily installed the systems before, and the team would have come and said, okay, here we now know that you have this and this. Okay, good for us. We have 10 we cross out 10 risks from our
no cross
list.
out, we mark them as mitigated.
Yes, true. Said as a true cybersecurity person, because they're never crossed out.
They're always in place.
But we mark them as mitigated, so you just then you focus on something else.
But probably it's difficult to know what is the biggest bang for your buck, right? If you're new to cybersecurity, should you start from anti-malware or should you go to MDM or maybe IAM or something else?
This is why risk assessment is helpful.
Right.
Not because it's kind of cool to do, but because it helps you to prioritize what goes first, what goes next. And it's it's important not only from your focus point, the point of your focus of attention, but also from your budgeting perspective, because there are so many tools like identity management. It always comes first, to be honest, in the risk assessment, and it makes sense. But because of it used to be so expensive before, the new era of startups came up, like StackBob, it was just unaffordable for a small business, to be honest, unless you use something from the single vendor, like only Microsoft, use only Microsoft tooling, let's say, and you have everything on Microsoft. But come on, for startups it's and for small companies it's impossible to use only one vendor. So how did you pass this challenge actually with identity management? Do you remember?
All right, but maybe before we go there, so for the tools, did you have some prioritization? Do you have the understanding where you start? Was it the anti-malware or something else?
So with us, I think we started off with the MDM, which we then used because installing it actually required interaction with each user, because before having the MDM, you actually have to message this person and say, hey, I actually need to right now enter your computer and install a program. After that, we used the MDM to roll out the anti-malware, because we now didn't have to go to each user every time we install something.
And why you choose MDM as the first step?
Well, because for us, the risks clearly showed the whole assessment process clearly showed that this is one of the top priorities, and it also. For us, besides it being in the top, let's say 10 or 20 priorities, it is also something that we felt very, it was very heavy on the time that our system administrators spent on their in their daily work. So we felt that this tool would improve our obviously improve our cybersecurity level, but also would help our system administrators work more efficiently. So it was kind of a win-win. So we decided to start off with that one.
And was it for laptops and desktops
for all
mobile
systems,
devices?
For all
everything.
devices, yeah, pretty
Very
much,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. So that was MDM, and what was next?
Next was antivirus. It's if we talk about tools in general, antivirus, anti-malware. But I would also like to add, because it sounds like, everything we did after that was just purchasing and installing tools, and it is not at all like that. I would actually say that the biggest part of the work was working with people, one of the biggest part. And it was actually improving employee level of knowledge.
Awareness.
Employee awareness in cybersecurity, yes. And it's because now I know that people are the most vulnerable chain in this whole in the system, and they're definitely it's the place where the system is more likely to break.
True.
So even if you install 100 system make everything secure, you cannot build you cannot be secure, because if people, let's say, put their passwords on stickers and stick them on their screen, I mean, whatever you do, if somebody does that, it just kills all of your effort at the root. So you have to teach people how to act securely in the digital world, and that's what we did. We were having lectures, we were sending out handbooks and explaining why you should do this and not do that.
And what was the reaction of the people?
It was actually different, and I have to say that it was
there are always champions on both sides.
So the lectures we had were mostly were received well, because it's just you just give them information, everybody is like, okay, interesting to know, you send them handbooks. It's more of when you start implementing certain policies or practices or installing certain software, it's where you face the challenges, because you have this triangle where you have price, where you have laptop efficiency and security itself. So if you want to be very secure, you probably need very expensive tools. Or you can purchase cheaper tools. Let's say you want cheaper tools, but they're still secure. Then they will take up a lot of the memory inside your laptop, and your laptop will work so much slower. So you are always working within the balance of these three parameters, and that's why people have to realize that cybersecurity always comes with the cost, and it is inevitable that some security programs are gonna take up some space on your laptop. They're gonna somehow affect your work.
And is it more about like processing power of the machines or some extra steps they need to go through?
It's all of it. So for example, we rolled out this update over the weekend and we warned everybody that, hey, we're going to be rolling out an update. So guys, just so you know, we're doing it on the weekend, so nobody gets affected on the actual work day. But please know that there is a high likelihood that you will be logged out of your systems and you will have to log back in. And even though we warned some people, I mean, you know, when you work, there are a lot of you receive a lot of messages, and obviously some people ignored ours, which is normal. We are all people. And you know, on Monday they were going on an important meeting and they were frustrated because they couldn't log on, or the system was rebooting or things like that. And even though we tested this particular update and like in 80 or 90% of the time it worked well. We tested it on several Apple devices, we tested it on several Windows-based devices, but still some people, like a certain person had a certain let's say MacBook with a specific configuration, and he was let's say in Germany, and you know, and it all clashed into like a situation where he couldn't log in, and you know, he is angry because he can't like log in because security guys are
security guys broke my computer again.
Yeah, and it looks bad, and I understand. If I was on the other side of the process, I would also be frustrating. So let's be real.
Thanks God, Nastya, you're on now.
Yeah, but things like that happen, and working with people and actually implementing the processes, explaining why you're implementing them and walking them step by step takes a huge amount of work, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm really interested about your situation with Okta. So at some point in time, you got to IAM, right?
Yeah.
And that's around the time when we met. And I remember at that time you were considering Okta as IAM provider. Can you guide us about that process? Like how you did you get to Okta, and what were the alternatives?
So we got to the point where whenever you have 10 people on the team, it's not hard to remember, like, you know, somebody leaves, you just, you know, close their account in, I don't know, in your mailing system, in your work chat, and sometimes stream or system, and that's it. And when you have a few people and a few systems, you can kind of just, you know, keep that in mind, and you don't have to, and you don't need any.
But still,
but when you grow, it's not a cool thing to do, but it's manageable whenever you have, you know, very small team. When you go, when you move to more people, it's becoming harder and harder. Especially, I face not just in Roosh, in many companies. What happens is a person leaves and somebody says, "Well, please keep their account because somebody, you know, we're receiving important messages there, or things like that, or we needed to log into somewhere else," and you keep the account, and everybody forgot.
I need justification from CEO.
Yeah, you keep the account. Everybody forgets that it exists, and it's just sitting there. It's, you know, it's eating your costs, it's eating your budget, and it's also creating it's creating potential cybersecurity risks, so it's not cool. And at a certain point, it just becomes very overwhelming for IT team to support the onboarding and offboarding, and keeping track as to who has access where, who has licenses where. And obviously, we started building, we actually built an access matrix within, I think it was either spreadsheets or Notion, or so within the tools that were at that point we already had. But it was maintaining them was very hard and very time consuming, and they were not convenient.
And so access matrix is like a list of tools, list of people,
and kind of like,
data.
You know, and how they like, you know, this person has this level of access to this tool. So that's why you call it a matrix.
And how often do you update that, and who was running that?
So our system administrators had to update it, and basically well, quite often, because we are a big company, so there are always some changes going on, and so you have to update it, you know, a few times a week maybe, and obviously there is a human factor where someone forgets to update it. And again, I'm not judging. I actually understand, because I mean, there is a certain amount of routine handwork that you can remember, and after some time you just you forget, and it's just a risk that you need to take into account. So we realized that unless we reviewed this matrix, let's say each week, and made sure that it's, you know, current and updated, which took up a lot of time. There was no other way to keep track of these things and accounts, of the accounts and people and things like that. So we started thinking about getting a tool to serve that specific purpose. Usually that's handled by using the IEM systems, any kind of system. And the most popular on the market was, and I'm guessing still is Okta, which is
and the most expensive.
And the most expensive. So, and the trick behind the costs, it costs quite a lot of money itself. But okay, let's say we understand that we need it and we purchase it. The trick is that usually you purchase Okta, and then your users are then logging into systems using Okta single sign-on SSO, because it only makes sense if you have this the whole ecosystem, or you purchase it as an ecosystem. And the trick there, the cost that you do not even realize exists as well, is that if you purchase Okta and you want your users to sign in with Okta, you have to, for example, in Notion, you have to purchase only the enterprise plan allows you to integrate Okta, and if you don't have an enterprise plan, you have to switch Notion to enterprise. So that's extra cost right there. And quite a few tools use the same approach.
Most of them, actually.
Most of them, yeah. So you basically, what you end up paying for the system itself, and then for upgrading each of the tools you use in order to be
even
able to...
if you don't need these features.
Even if you don't need those features. So when we calculated the cost, for us, it was too much. It was not worth it.
Do you remember approximately
Honestly, no. But it just, the idea it was that probably for some companies it is justifiable. If you look at the budget of the whole company, amount of employees, then it's it's justifiable. For us, it was just not. It was so much higher than all of the the rest of our budget that it was just it didn't make sense.
Yeah, typically it's about 200%, could be 300% more, depending on your current subscription. So if you mostly use basic or middle plans for your tools, and you want to implement something like Okta through SSO, and you upgrade every of them, then the cost of single subscription might be 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 times more expensive than the basic plan. And that's crazy, because if you do that for most of your tools, then you just end up, if you're, for example, a 100 people company and you spend let's say $500,000 a year on software, then just upgrading all these tools will end you up easily with 1 million of spend, or it could be 1.5 million. And despite the Okta might cost you 100K a year or something like that, just all those other upgrades will be much more expensive.
With that said, still Okta, I guess it's a quite versatile solution, because they have developed, they act as a glue for identity independently from what environment you're using, and they really could make it effective gluing together. It's just it's a long, complex way which requires you to have some extra hidden costs to be considered as well. And I think, it's not feasible if you think about this IDM approach for long term. And definitely solutions, they should come up, and they're coming up, the solutions of kind of new era which reimagine the way how we manage identities, basically, and use different methods, approaches, how to understand what accesses your people got, where they have accounts, how you could optimize and structure the metrics, actually, the access metrics, and make it in automative AI-ish way.
AI-ish.
AI powered, you say?
Yeah.
AI power.
So the SAML SSO is a protocol that's used by Okta, which is quite outdated. And the Okta itself, it just appeared on the market 15 years ago, where it was cloud revolution. Everything was moving to the cloud. It was first cloud-based IAM solution, and now it's the AI era. And we believe that it's time for AI powered tools to revolutionize the market. So what happened next? So you realized...
Funny you ask! We realized that Okta would not... we were looking at it and kind of thinking, okay, well, what if we still go with it? So we were kind of struggling with making a choice. Yes, and it's actually, we have a very we met with Olive. It was a very coincidental situation. Our venture, Roosh Ventures, which is the venture track within Roosh. So one of the guys actually came to us and said, we have a startup that is doing something that might be interesting for your team. could you kind of meet with them and, just talk and tell us what you think, maybe, is this something that is at all interesting and things like that. So they wanted more of, our like personal take or evaluation on this thing, and that's how we met Ole, and he presented his tool, and it was very different from what we've taken a look at before, and then that's how we started working together.
It was great discussion. I think it was very insightful in micro details, and we just touched the fraction of cybersecurity realm, to be honest. Still, you managed cybersecurity for 2 years. Mm-hmm. You started from zero, ending up with a very nice cybersecurity framework. What would be your, top 5 things, top 5 advices, top 5 considerations, top 5 myths, which you now understand are working another way for the audience, for those who only start this way?
Okay, so number 1, I would mention that, as I said, cybersecurity is not an aim. It's not a point in time or a system state that you can be reached. It's just a way. It's a journey that you endure on, and that you just go and explore. So there will never be a time in the company or in life that your company will be 100%, or your systems, whatever, will be 100% cyber secure. It's impossible. Yeah. It's technically impossible. What you do is you try to minimize the risks and minimize the level of potential impact. That is not point number 1.
So it's way of life, basically.
It's kind of lifestyle. Yeah, it's a lifestyle. Very cool. Yeah, but for me, for example, it was a discovery, because I came to the meeting, to our first meeting with her, and we were sitting, and I'm like, okay, so tell me,
how many days?
What do I need to do to be, cyber secure? And he tells, and it was his first, I think it was like the
sit
first,
down.
And it was the first slide of his presentation. He's like, well, cybersecurity is not something that can be reached. And I'm like, oh man,
I'm out.
So. So number 2 would be that it was also very unexpected for me, is that building a cybersecurity system within a company requires involvement of somebody, of an operations person. Can it be someone from the, let's say, technical team? Yes, but it has to be a person who has the influence in operations, who knows how to build processes, who can communicate them with the heads of the departments, with people, with with everybody else, and who can implement them, explain them to people. So there is a lot of communication and process description involved, and most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, tech guys are usually very good at tech, but they hate communication, which is okay, because their job is to do tech, and so most of the time you need somebody else to handle that part for you, and involving an operations person in the process is actually, for me, felt like a good idea, and I still believe that me being involved in the process was helped us successfully implement the system and implement it faster.
I think this is a tremendous advice, because traditionally everybody think about CTO role, CIO role, IT director or whatever, but IT should be somewhere there around, right? And operations, it's definitely not in the top 3 list, and our experience shows that it's a very effective model.
True. So that will probably be number 2. Number 3, I'd say that cybersecurity is not just 1 tool or 3 tools.
Yep.
It's a whole system.
It's a lot of tools.
It's a lot of tools. But as I mentioned before, I would say that we worked together, let's say, for 2 years. And out of that time, picking, installing, and implementing tools was probably maybe 20% of the time. We spent a lot of time in setting up employees awareness program and teaching employees on how to act cyber securely.
Exams?
We actually did some tests, yes, spam messages, and saw how many people clicked and how many people opened the links. So we did that as well. But
you know what, you might say in a little bit different way if you wouldn't be subscriber of managed security services for SOC, because this part requires lots of tooling as well, and you simply outsource this whole part, right? So incident management was done by external company as well. And just imagine that you would also need it to build these type of processes.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably the most complicated generally in cybersecurity. It's like the culmination of everything what you do. You implement controls, you implement tools, you optimize processes, and then somebody needs to monitor that it really works as intended, right? As your controls should work. And somebody needs to process what your basically the alerts which are generated by your tooling system, by your platforms.
But some tools can even save you money.
Absolutely.
Choose wisely.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
How about a very quick and short straw poll?
Okay.
In fact, I have two straw polls.
Okay.
Choose one.
Okay.
No, the one
You
I
want
would
to-
ask you to make, and the one would be on
Cool.
me.
All right. All right.
So the first one is which I would name you two items from cybersecurity, and you should very quickly, without thinking too long, say which one you would invest first.
So basically, we're testing your subconsciousness.
Oh God. Oh God.
Just quickly say whatever comes to mind
I'm afraid
first.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
fail, but okay.
Again,
let's
the
try.
question sounds which one you invest first.
Okay.
So in the first poll, there is no wrong answers, right? Because you will anyway
Right.
invest in second,
Okay.
but later.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Awareness training versus pen test.
Awareness training,
Asset inventory or log monitoring.
asset inventory,
Identity management or vulnerability management.
vulnerability management,
Asset inventory or strong authentication.
still asset inventory,
Prevention or detection.
prevention.
Okay.
Prevention,
Incident
yeah.
response plan or incident response tooling.
God, they're tough. Incident response tooling.
Okay. Phishing test or MFA.
MFA.
Cool. I like the answers. The next one is for you. Do you have it open?
Yeah, sure.
So the question would be if you could pick only one.
Ooh.
Cool. I like your answers.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say mostly the same thing which you
Okay,
did.
cool. Okay. I'm happy.
So the mindset,
2
you
years
have a
were not
cybersecurity
wasted.
mindset. Yeah.
The subconsciousness worked great.
Right.
Okay, so if you could pick only one, virtual CISO or in-house CISO?
If possible, I would pick in-house CISO, not to
No offenses.
undermine the work,
No
but
worries.
in-house person always knows the context better, can actually be a sole decision maker, because no matter what happens, whenever you work with an external provider, they can always advise something for you, but you have to make the decision. They cannot make
But
the
this
decision
is
for
like
you.
an ideal world with unlimited resources,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
In your case, like, would you still choose vCISO or in-house CISO?
We did well when choosing the vCISO at that point, but I think that at a certain point of the company growth, we will have to find a person that work in-house. It's just that for us at that point, we realized that it would take so much time, it will cost so much more money, and we didn't feel that it was necessary back at that point. So I do believe that both choices are actually valid. No,
Straw polls, guys. Straw
Yeah.
polls.
sorry, yeah.
Security by design or security after breach?
By design.
Oh, and this is where you shine. This is
Of course, of course.
policies everyone understands versus automated enforcement tools.
Automated enforcement, of course. You have to. I believe that, yeah, it makes much more sense if something is just. It does not let you make a mistake. If the system does not let you make a mistake, it's much
Agree.
easier. Yeah.
Cloud first or on-prem?
Cloud first.
Passwordless or long passwords?
I would pick long passwords.
Okay.
So you're a traditionalist, I would say.
Yeah. Oh yes. Trust me.
Zero tools and strong process versus lots of tools, no process.
Neither.
Okay, we'll accept that.
I love that. SOC 2 certification or actual security?
Just certifying just for the sake of the paper makes no sense to me, because I mean.
But your clients might think different, right? So
Yeah.
the market is. But this is a great choice for
you
cybersecurity.
you can build SOC 2, but make sure that you build it right. You do not just build the system for the sake of receiving the certificate. Otherwise, it's just a paper, and you wasted a lot of money on processes that are not even working.
So basically, SOC 2 with actual security.
With actual security, yeah.
But we don't have this answer.
Oh, we can.
Actual security was the answer.
We
I
are
guess.
free minds. We can do whatever we want. Again, the last one: real-time alerts or weekly threat reports.
You have to have both. High risk.
But if you need to choose, like, whether you have real time or you have it once a week.
I would pick real time, of course, because
absolutely.
it's a more secure way. As a person who receives a lot of alerts, that's why I'm like, okay,
This is exactly why we created this question.
Yeah. But I would really love to have an option to kind of, subscribe to some of the alerts and then subscribe from others that would come in a weekly reporting.
Okay, maybe then the last, how you say, a wish, not a wish, anything you want to say to the audience, so to the business leaders like you, specifically maybe in operations, like what is the one thing you would advise them to take a look or pay attention in 2025?
I believe that any leader within a company, no matter what job you're taking, you usually, it's a wise thing to do to kind of identify the risks and the vulnerabilities, whatever they are within your department. And if you see that the risks you're facing are related somehow to technology, to cybersecurity, then it's probably a good idea to start thinking about it and doing something about it.
Cool advice. I like it. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
It was
Thank
a
you
real
for inviting
pleasure.
me. Yes, thanks.
And
pleasure.
thank you all. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave your comment. We would appreciate your thoughts. Thank you, Anastasia, once again.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Cheers.
Yay!